Deep within the steel walls of America's most powerful warships, there exists a world few outside the Navy will ever glimpse. To the 5,000 sailors who call an aircraft carrier home, these floating fortresses are relentless factories of war. Fighter jets thunder off the deck every 90 seconds. Helicopters shuttle supplies and personnel. And the twin nuclear reactors hum with a quiet power strong enough to run a small town for decades. Yet beneath all this chaos lies a quieter world, a hidden side of life at sea, where the Navy's top officers live, plan, and make the decisions that shape global security. These aren't your average cramped bunks or cold metal lockers. The living and working spaces for captains and admirals rival luxury hotels in comfort, but with a twist. Every chair, desk, and private dining room is designed not for leisure, but for war-fighting readiness. Behind polished wood tables and private offices lie secure phone lines to the Pentagon, encrypted data screens, and the responsibility of steering not just a ship, but American power itself. Life aboard one of these vessels runs on hierarchy. You can feel it in the steel itself. At the very top sits the commanding officer, usually a Navy captain. That rank might sound ordinary, but don't let the word fool you. A carrier's captain is closer to being the mayor of a city of 5,000, the CEO of a billion-dollar enterprise, and the principal of the hardest school you've ever imagined, all at once. When a flag officer, usually a rear admiral, comes aboard, the stakes climb even higher. That admiral doesn't just oversee the carrier, but the entire strike group. Destroyers, cruisers, submarines, and more than 70 combat aircraft. Imagine billions of dollars in hardware, enough firepower to level enemy fleets, and aviation fuel stockpiled to keep a small air force in the sky for months, all coordinated by a handful of officers whose offices are tucked inside a steel leviathan at sea. The executive officer, or XO, serves as the captain's right hand, ensuring the ship runs like clockwork. Below them are department heads, leaders of air operations, engineering, and navigation, each commanding groups larger than some entire Army battalions. And their quarters reflect that chain of command. The higher the rank, the more privacy and workspace. Not out of vanity, but because leadership requires rest, constant communication, and space to think clearly under pressure. The captain's quarters are not just a place to sleep, they're more like a floating executive suite combined with a war room. In port, these quarters transform into a diplomatic hub. Picture polished furniture, a dining space to host visiting generals, ambassadors, and allies, and Navy chefs serving meals worthy of any five-star restaurant. A carrier doesn't just project bombs and missiles, it projects diplomacy. When the USS Gerald R. Ford pulls into Naples, Yokosuka, or Norfolk, the captain's cabin becomes the setting for deals, alliances, and conversations that ripple through world politics. Once the ship leaves port, though, the captain moves into smaller at-sea quarters near the bridge and combat information center. If something goes wrong, a fire in the hangar bay, a man overboard, or a foreign destroyer shadowing too close, the captain must be on scene in seconds. In this office, secure lines connect directly to Washington, and the captain may find themselves discussing global crises at 3 in the morning while jets roar overhead. One luxury sets the space apart: a private bathroom. While most sailors share heads with dozens of others, the commanding officer enjoys complete privacy. That may sound small, but when you're running a ship that launches more aircraft daily than most countries' entire air forces, that privacy is mission critical. When an admiral is embarked, the contrast is striking. Their quarters are practically a floating palace, part Pentagon office, part five-star suite, and part command center. Picture a secure conference room where encrypted video calls connect directly to the White House Situation Room. Digital screens track every aircraft, submarine, and destroyer across hundreds of miles of ocean. Some rooms even have exercise gear, personal dining areas, and climate control, because admirals often work 18-hour days making decisions that shape the world map. Think about that for a moment. Whether to strike, whether to hold back, whether to intercept an enemy fleet, sometimes those calls are made over dinner in the admiral's dining room while the ship shakes with the thunder of jets landing above. Step away from these palaces, and you enter what sailors call officer country. Here the junior officers live and work. On older Nimitz-class carriers, 2 or 3 officers might share a room barely big enough for a desk and locker. On the USS Gerald R. Ford, however, the design changed everything. For the first time, most officers have their own rooms with private bathrooms and climate-controlled air. That might not sound glamorous on land, but at sea, it's revolutionary. Imagine being able to rest before a night mission without being woken by your roommate clanging lockers. Imagine having Wi-Fi in a lounge where you can call home, stream a movie, or even just catch up on emails before a briefing. Fitness is a matter of survival, not vanity. The Ford comes equipped with 3 full gyms, packed with machines you'd expect at a top health club. And for good reason. A Navy pilot may need to endure 7 times the force of gravity during combat, while an engineering officer might be hauling heavy gear through smoke-filled passageways in firefighting gear. Bodies break down if they aren't conditioned, so weight rooms and treadmills aren't luxuries. They're lifelines. Meals, too, are steeped in tradition. Officers gather in the wardroom, a dining hall that doubles as a classroom, meeting room, and cultural hub. Navy etiquette here runs deep. No one sits before the commanding officer. Sea stories are told, lessons are passed down, and respect for rank never falters. Some of the most important missions in recent history, including airstrikes over Iraq and Afghanistan, were first sketched out on the wardroom's tables, often with a cup of coffee and a plate of Navy lasagna on hand. The food itself might surprise you. Trained culinary specialists can serve steak dinners, stir-fry, or even ice cream sundaes on morale nights. Because when jets are launching off the deck at midnight in the middle of the Gulf, good food isn't just nutrition, it's sanity. It's easy to forget just how massive these ships are until you live on one. A fully deployed carrier carries about 5,000 people, the size of a small town. But unlike any town on land, this one comes with 2 nuclear reactors, 4 steam catapults, and the ability to hurl fighter jets into the sky with warloads heavier than a school bus. It has its own fire department, its own television station, its own doctors and dentists, and even its own post office. For officers, daily life begins long before dawn. Briefings, inspections, paperwork, meetings, and emergencies fill their hours. Flight operations run 24 hours, and officers may be called at any moment to make decisions that risk lives and billions of dollars in equipment. Quarters, then, aren't just comfortable spaces. They're designed as recovery rooms, private war councils, and communication hubs. And thanks to satellite internet and secure phones, modern officers can speak with their families from thousands of miles away. A far cry from the World War II days when sailors sometimes went months without a letter. The USS Gerald R. Ford represents the biggest leap in carrier design since the 1960s, and officers benefit directly. Noise is cut dramatically. Ventilation is improved. Passageways are wider. Older carriers might have packed 180 sailors into a single berthing area. The Ford reduces that to 40, giving space and silence where once there was none. Even the hospital onboard rivals civilian trauma centers, with operating rooms and intensive care units ready to save lives in the middle of the ocean. Of course, all of this officer life exists for one reason: to direct America's floating arsenal of doom. These carriers are not cruise ships. They are the ultimate symbols of power, bristling with firepower designed to defend freedom at sea. The flight deck is a stage of controlled chaos, where jets blast into the sky every 90 seconds. Each F/A-18 Super Hornet can carry nearly 18,000 pounds of weapons, precision bombs, laser-guided missiles, or air-to-air armaments. The EA-18G Growler jams enemy radars. The E-2D Hawkeye, with its spinning radar dome, acts as the eyes of the fleet, tracking threats hundreds of miles away. And the arrival of the F-35C Lightning II brings stealth technology to the carrier deck, able to slip past defenses and strike deep into enemy territory. The aircraft carrier may look like a giant floating airport, but don't mistake it for a helpless target. Every inch of its perimeter bristles with defenses designed to keep it alive in the deadliest environments on Earth. Along the edges of the flight deck, the Phalanx close-in weapon system stands guard. A 20mm Gatling gun so fast it spits out nearly 4,500 rounds per minute, When it fires, it's not a series of bullets, but a solid stream of tungsten that shreds incoming missiles before they can reach the ship. Just beyond that, Sea Sparrow surface-to-air missiles sit ready in their launch cells. The moment enemy aircraft or anti-ship weapons are detected, these sleek interceptors streak into the sky at supersonic speeds, detonating threats before they get within striking distance. Layered with advanced electronic warfare systems that jam, confuse, or blind enemy sensors, the carrier transforms from a vulnerable platform into a fortress, one capable of defending itself while still projecting power thousands of miles from home. But perhaps nothing captures the raw violence of this steel city like its daily flight operations. The catapults that hurl aircraft into the sky aren't just machines. They're controlled explosions. With a thunderous crack, they sling a 30-ton jet from 0 to 165 miles per hour in just 2.5 seconds. The sound is so violent that conversation becomes impossible. The deck quakes under the strain, and steel fixtures rattle as though an earthquake is struck. Then comes the recovery. Returning fighters slam onto the deck at 150 miles per hour, snagging thick arresting wires stretched across the landing area. The sudden stop compresses shock absorbers and shakes the entire ship. Sailors trying to sleep just one deck below swear the impacts feel like Mother Nature herself is hammering on the walls. For newcomers, it's a shock. For veterans, it's simply the heartbeat of the ship. This cycle of violence, thunderous launches, bone-shaking recoveries, and the ever-present growl of jet engines, never truly stops. On a carrier, the war machine doesn't rest. It breathes, roars, and trembles with every launch and landing, day and night. But ask any American sailor and they'll tell you those sounds aren't annoyances. They're the heartbeat of freedom. They mean jets are in the sky, protecting shipping lanes, deterring enemies, and keeping peace where peace is fragile. The officers living in comfort aboard these carriers aren't pampered bureaucrats. They are warfighters carrying the heaviest responsibility imaginable. When the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower recently wrapped up its 9-month deployment in the Red Sea, defending global shipping against Houthi missiles, officers endured the most intense operation since World War II. Without quarters built for rest and planning, morale might have cracked long before the mission ended. These accommodations are not luxuries. They are national security tools. America doesn't just invest in weapons, it invests in the leaders who command them. It's worth asking the big question: could any other Navy on Earth truly match the power of the United States aircraft carriers? On paper, China is trying. They've launched their new Fujian carrier, a massive flat top that looks impressive in photos, but here's the reality. It hasn't yet completed a real combat deployment. Russia, on the other hand, is stuck with the aging Admiral Kuznetsov, a ship that spends more time belching black smoke in port than actually sailing. Sailors joke that its tow cables are more reliable than its engines. Beijing may dream of turning the South China Sea into its own personal swimming pool, but that would require something they've never done: beating the U.S. Navy in a straight fight. And historically, that has happened exactly never. Not once. America's carrier strike groups are more than just ships. They're symbols of power that sail into any ocean and instantly change the balance. One carrier alone carries more aircraft than most nations' entire air forces, backed by destroyers, cruisers, submarines, and nuclear firepower that can strike anywhere, anytime. But behind all that steel and firepower lies something just as important: the people who run it. For every pilot climbing into a cockpit, every sailor manning radar screens, and every officer making life-or-death calls about whether to launch a strike or hold back, their quarters aren't just places to sleep. They're homes, workspaces, and command posts rolled into one. They allow America's leaders at sea to think clearly, rest when possible, and fight when necessary. That's the hidden world of officer life aboard America's aircraft carriers. It's a world of comfort built not for indulgence, but for leadership in the storm. And as long as these floating fortresses sail, freedom sails with them. If you enjoyed diving into this behind-the-scenes look at America's carriers, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We've got more powerful stories, more military insights, and more hidden worlds to uncover. Stay tuned because the next voyage is just getting started.